welcome to your practice. We're going to get started today with some self-myofascial release techniques. And what I'm going to do is demonstrate the technique for you, and then you can hit pause and take as much time as you need to work on any one particular area. So to get started today, we'll be working with a block. You may want to have a towel or something soft to put over the block to make it just a bit softer at any point in time. We'll also be working with myofascial release balls. These could be tennis balls or lacrosse balls. These are somewhere in between the softness of a tennis and lacrosse ball, and these particular balls have a little bit of grip to them too, which is nice to not slide on your skin or on your shirt. It's possible that you have a conjoined balls. You could also do this by placing two of the non-conjoined balls into a sock and then tying it down tight with a tie, a zip tie or something like that to hold them together. These particular ones that I have are actually too hard to really be useful for much of anything, but I will use them to demonstrate with. And if you happen to have a center ball, I'll show you a pelvic floor myofascial release technique, center ball or one of these larger balls. This one is deflated on purpose because when you see the pelvic floor technique, you'll see that you don't want to have that big and hard. You want it to have a lot of give to it. So we'll use that later on. Again, a good idea to think of this as just an instructional video, and then you can hit pause anytime you like and spend as much time as you'd like with any of these techniques. For self-myofascial release, anywhere between 30 seconds to up to 2 minutes is going to be our window of opportunity for being the most effective. So holding at least 30 seconds before we even start to move, and then really only holding and or moving up to about 2 minutes. We kind of get diminished returns after 2 minutes, so there's no need to spend more time there. A reminder about myofascial release, or maybe you don't know, I'll tell you that it's not about digging in and breaking up anything. We certainly don't want to break up our connective tissue, but rather we want to think about hydrating it and facilitating the proper sliding and gliding of those layers of tissue. We don't want to feel any pain at all. If you feel pain, you move away from that. You may feel intensity, and as long as it's an intensity that feels helpful to you, you can stay with that. We won't be compressing or doing any kind of myofascial release, whether it's block or balls or anything, onto any kind of broken or bruised skin. And certainly if you have an injury, it needs to be completely healed. If there's any question, you can check with your doctor about that. But it can be, myofascial release can be very helpful to, again, we're not breaking up, but to get into scar tissue in order to, again, facilitate the sliding and gliding of the tissues if there's been any kind of adhesions or sort of velcroing happening in the scar tissue. All right, so let's get started. We're going to start at the top and work our way down the body. So our first technique is going to be for the neck, and we're going to be using a yoga block. We'll place that yoga block onto its medium side here, and again, a towel might be handy if you find that the block in any way is too sharp. Have a look at what we're going to do. So we're going to lie down onto your mat or onto your surface, and we'll use that block on its medium side. You're going to place the back of your head, the very base of the skull here, onto the block, and I like to use my hands to hold it in place to make sure it's not going to tip over as I do that. You'll want this inner edge of the block to be pressing right into the very top of the neck, the atlas of the neck. So that place where the neck and the skull come together. You want to be in soft tissue though. So the skull itself is resting on that medium side of the block. And then as you drop the chin down and lengthen the neck, you feel the edge of the block is pressing into that soft tissue of the neck. So once you've found the right place, make sure your block is nice and solid on your surface. We don't want it tipping back or tipping forward, and you can use your hands back here just to ensure that. So arms can rest anywhere you like, over the abdomen or by your sides, and we'll drop the chin toward the chest. So the technique is to roll as far to one side as you can. It doesn't matter where it is, but you're going to go just as far as you can, and then come about 1/3 of the way back towards center, which is not very far. It's really just maybe a ½ inch. You'll find that you've shifted onto another part of soft tissue there, and hopefully you'll have the sensation that you're on a muscle. It feels a little different there. So our main mode in myofascial release is compression, simply holding in any place that feels helpful. And it is a very subjective thing once you get to these places, looking for a helpful spot. So we've been here for about 30 seconds or so, and now we can add movement if you'd like to. The movement here, you're going to imagine that with the tip of your nose, you're drawing a tiny little circle right out in front of you. Tiny little circle. Bigger is not better here, so we're just going for a small circle. You can reverse that circle and go the other way. Again, if you need more time in any one of these places, just hit pause on the video. We'll stop and be still, take a deep breath here, and then we'll move only 1/3, another 1/3 of the way back towards center. So we're 2/3 of the way back towards center. Very small movement. Same thing, you'll stay here for at least 30 seconds with compression. And you should be able to perceive just even these slight shifts, just even a fraction of an inch one way or another way might give you a different result. It might be more helpful or less helpful. And then once we've been here for a while, we can make that tiny little circle with the tip of the nose, like you're drawing a little circle right out in front of you, one way and the other way. As long as you like, you've always got the pause button. We'll stop and take a deep breath here. And then as you're ready to roll your head back into the center. Now you're going to do the other side, and just for brevity of the video, I'm going to stop here. Again, hit pause. You'll move to the other side. Remember, our key markers are 1/3. 1/3 of the way back, and then another 1/3 of the way back. So that's our neck myofascial release. Let's move on to scalenes. So these are very important muscles here in the neck that run through the side of the neck that help us to be able to turn the head and other functions as well. They can get tight, they can get irritated. So I'll show you two different techniques that we might use. One I can show you here, and one we'll have to use our imagination that there's a wall in the space. So the easiest way to do this is by using your own hand. We'll turn the hand upside down. We can call this hitchhiker thumb. Turn it upside down. The fingers are going to go to the back of the neck, and the thumb will dip down. And we're not trying to put pressure on with the thumb. And sometimes I actually like to just take my thumb behind my neck as well. Sometimes it's easier for me. We're applying pressure with the heel of the hand into the side of the neck. You'll be able to move up and down the neck a little bit. And so our technique here would be to press in and release. Press in and release. Just looking for a helpful spot here. And if you find a helpful spot, of course, you can press in and hold. Just note that here along the side of the neck, and especially as we work our way down into this area between the collarbone and the neck, this junction from the shoulder to the neck, it does get really sensitive. You've got some important bits of blood vessels and nerves running through this area. So we don't want to compress onto that. And certainly your body will tell you if you're in the wrong place. So again, a press and release, press and release. If you find an interesting and or helpful place, you might press and hold. Another technique that we might use is using one ball, placing it into this area just above where the collarbone and the shoulder are. So just above that, again, not onto a really sensitive place. You'd need to do this into a doorway, and I don't have a doorway in this space to show you. Either a doorway or an inside corner, not a corner that goes this way, but maybe you've got a corner that goes that way. So imagine being in a doorway. You're going to place this ball into that area of your neck, and then you're going to actually lean your head through the doorway. Imagine this is my doorway here. Placing the ball onto the wall, lean your head through the doorway. You might want to squat down just a little bit so you can really leverage, get into the right place and be able to roll and adjust. And you're just going to stay there with compression. Now that ball is being compressed by the doorway, and you can control that with more weight leaning in or a little bit less weight. So that's another way to get into that same area. We're going to move on down to the back now, and we're going to hit 5 points along the back. I'll show you on my back, and it'll be difficult to see once I lie down onto the mat. So the 5 points will be, imagine your shoulder blades here on your back. We're going to go toward the top edge of the shoulder blade, and then we'll go to the bottom edge of the shoulder blade. The spine runs through the middle, and you're going to be in this place in between the spine. Here is the spine, in between the spine and the shoulder blade. So this area here. We're always staying off of the spine, or really off of bones, because there's no benefit to compressing bones, and it might be painful too. So top edge of the shoulder blade, bottom edge of the shoulder blade will be our markers. We'll drop down just maybe not even an inch below that to what we might call bra strap or heart rate monitor strap, where a heart rate monitor would sit right around your rib cage. So we'll be in that place. We'll drop down about maybe another inch or so and come to what we might call the kidney area. We'll still be on the rib cage there. And then we're going to drop down below the rib cage and above the pelvis. So I'll turn around and try to point my back into these different places. All right, so spot number 1, right up here, top edge of the shoulder blade. Spot number 2, right toward the bottom edge of the shoulder blade. Again, you're in this area between the shoulder blade and the spine. Spot number 3, we're going to drop down just a little bit here. We're still just outside of the spine. Spot number 4, we're going to drop down maybe another inch. It just depends on the length of your torso. We're still on the rib cage, and now we might slide out a little bit further. And then spot number 5 is going to be just below the rib cage, just above the pelvis. If you put your hands onto your hips, your thumbs will be on the pelvis, and you can lift just a little bit above there. All right, let's get started with that. The technique I like to use is to go ahead and place the balls down onto the mat, somewhere in the middle of the mat, because then you can roll your body over the surface of the balls, and then you wind up with your head here at the top of the mat. So you can go ahead and put the balls together. There's actually enough space in between. They're not actual space, but because the ball is round, it's not going to be compressing onto the spine there, and it will naturally fall, the balls will naturally fall off of the spine. So place that right in the middle there. Help yourself down, use your hands, use your elbows to get yourself to that place. And remember, we're headed to the top first. So you're going to scrunch down toward the bottom of the mat, use your elbows to bring you down, and you can just let your back tap onto the balls. That's maybe a little bit too low to get to the first spot. A little bit too low. And there it is. All right. I'm going to move through this pretty quickly, but please use that pause button, hit the pause so that you can spend the time that you need to there. So I found that I've settled down at the top edge of the shoulder blade. I'm not on the spine, it's just off of the spine, so that's exactly where I want to be. Stay here at least 30 seconds, longer if you like, and of course you can shift and adjust and find a place that feels the most helpful to you. Something else that we might do here, if we wanted to bring movement to this area, is to lift and lower the arms. That could be up, just pointing fingertips toward the ceiling, or maybe you're going to take the arms further overhead. It's going to bring definitely more sensation there, the higher up that the arms go. If you find that just lifting the arms off the ground is too much, just bring them back down and stay with compression. Again, we're going up to about 2 minutes in this place when that feels helpful to you. We're going to shift to spot number 2. It's really just maybe not even an inch. And notice that I'm using my elbows and my feet to roll myself to spot number 2. I can feel the balls catching my hair, so I'm going to stop there, get that out of the way. And now I've shifted down to spot number 2. I'm toward the bottom edge of the shoulder blades, and I can almost feel the shoulder blades hugging or wrapping around the balls, and that's what we're looking for. No pressure on the spine. We want to encourage the breath to move freely and to move in a comfortably deep way. With this deep breath, we can encourage the muscles to relax. And that's what we would really like to do is relaxing the muscles, just feeling as though the balls are rising up into the soft tissue. They have the ability to do that. The more that we relax, the better that is. All right, so here for at least 30 seconds, maybe you're staying with compression. If you'd like to add movement here, you could once again move the arms up and down. This might be an interesting place to open and close the arms as well, since we are right on the muscles that squeeze the shoulder blades together. And again, take your time, hit the pause button when you like. We're moving to spot number 3. That's probably not even an inch further down, spot number 3. So bra strap area, heart rate monitor area. Once again, it's catching my hair there. And, ooh, I definitely found it. And it's interesting that sometimes you'll feel spots that instantly react, that you instantly know that that's a place you need to be. And sometimes too, instantly know that's a place you don't need to be. So I'm just outside of the spine. I've dropped below the level of the shoulder blades now, right here in the thoracic spine, an area that doesn't move a whole lot. I'm going to make just a little shift there. Again, relaxing, breathing deep, and you're going to stay here for as long as you need to, up to about 2 minutes here. If you'd like to bring some movement here, we could make just a tiny little shift of the rib cage. Not even really, so we're not necessarily trying to roll from side to side, but just shifting. You'll feel the rib cage shifting side to side, and the balls aren't even moving very much, not very much here. But you're getting some good stimulation in there. I'll let you do that as long as you need to. Hit pause if you like, and I know I keep saying that, just a gentle reminder, and we'll move to spot number 4. So we're going to shift down just a little further. We're still on the rib cage, and as you shift, the balls may shift apart, or they might have the sensation that they're shifting apart as you move to a new spot. This is the spot that's just at the bottom edge of the rib cage, and you've got a little bit of leeway here, excuse me, to find a helpful spot. Just outside of the spine here, we may want to even shift the balls slightly further out. We might want to start experimenting with the long muscles that run alongside the spine. They run alongside the spine all the way up, but here we can really begin to feel them. So if you'd like to shift the balls further out, you can do that. Here as well, for movement, maybe just shifting the rib cage. You can feel the balls rolling, or you can feel your body rolling across the surface of the balls. All right, stay there as long as you like. When you're ready to, we'll move to spot number 5. So it's going to drop below the rib cage, and I'm starting to shift further out here. I'm going to actually move the balls, because at this point in time, we drop into an area that's much easier to move with your hands. So we're going to shift just slightly further out from the spine here. Take the time to place the balls in the right spot. We're in the lumbar curve now. So again, below the ribs, above the pelvis. Find that spot. And once we get into the lumbar curve, the sensation of the compression of the balls is considerably less. So if you'd like a little more sensation, you could push down into the feet, maybe hover the hips just a little bit. And it's not even so much to lift the hips up, but rather to flatten out the lumbar curve. I'm not feeling like that's quite enough. So another thing that you could do is lift the feet off the ground, pull the knees in toward the chest. Again, here we're flattening out the lumbar curve. I'm still not feeling enough, so I feel like I'm not in the right place. I'm going to shift just a little bit. There it is. Again, sometimes just a small shift can make a big difference. Here, if you'd like to, we could cross fiber. Those long ropey muscles, you're going to put your feet back down, right? And just slightly elevate the hips. Again, we don't want to roll on top of the spine. So notice that as I'm shifting side to side, I'm barely even moving. I'm going to move the balls even just a tiny bit further out. There we go. And get the shift going. Note that once you start to move, probably the balls will start to separate from each other a little further, and you can always replace the balls and just continue that movement. While we're here, we can work our way into the QL. This will be one side at a time. So QL is a deeper muscle that attaches onto the bottom edge of the ribs, onto the spine, and also onto the top of the pelvis. It's underneath these long ropey muscles, so we're going to need to sneak our way in just a bit, and we can do one side at a time. Again, spend as much time here with this lumbar curve as you like. For QL, I'll sit up and show you that. Same area that you just were for lumbar spine. So we'll be down in here, but if you can feel these long ropey muscles here, you can almost grab them with your hands. We're going to be sneaking in from the outside and trying to bypass that ever so slightly and work our way underneath. So the ball, instead of being maybe here, it could just roll a little further out, and then we'll lean to the side in order to angle our way in. Know that you can do all of this up against a wall too. You don't have to do it on the ground. And up against a wall, it's going to be probably a little bit less pressure. If you want more pressure, lie down on the ground. And certainly, I'm on a soft surface, but if you'd like more pressure, you might want to be on something that's a little bit harder. So let's find the QL. Feet down onto the mat, bend the knees. We'll roll the ball. You don't even really need to lift the hips here, but you're going to slide it into the side. And there's several different spots that you might find back there, and just find one that seems interesting. After I've slid the ball in, I'm going to lean a little bit to the side, and I'm going to try to find the pressure. Here I feel like I need to flatten out the lumbar curve once again, so I'm going to do that. And I know this is very subtle, you probably may not be able to see, but I've gone from here to over here, and that's where I'm going to start to feel some things back here. And then certainly you can explore that space. Ooh, I just found a really good one, so I'm going to stay there. And again, this particular muscle attaches onto the spine, the bottom ribs, and the pelvis. So several spots that you might explore back there. Again, just for demonstration purposes, we're going to stay there on that one spot. You can do a little movement here, shifting a little bit side to side, but spend as much time as you would like to back there. All right, let's move on. We're still in the back, but we're going to take a different technique this time. This is deeper Rotatores group. So a group of muscles that help to stabilize the spine and help to facilitate rotation as well. You're going to stack one ball on top of the other. We're going to be down here in the T7, T12 area, so the lower part of the mid-back, and that's going to be toward the bottom edge of the rib cage. Point that out to you here. It's a very similar place that we were before. Here's the spine running along here. We'll be literally just outside the spine. Now, once we got down into this lower area before, we slid the balls here. We slid them a little further out. This time we're going to have the balls stacked, one on top of each other, and you'll be literally just outside the spine. Snuggle the balls right up next to the spine. You can come on down and give that a try. You might want to place the balls there. You might want to put them onto your mat and then bring yourself down onto it. And we will be doing this one side at a time. We're in the thoracic spine area, so this area doesn't move a whole lot. Certainly, if you lie down onto the balls and you feel like your head is dropping really far back, take a block on its low side or even fold up a towel and you can place it there. Now the balls are just outside the spine, a tiny little space, a tiny little river of soft tissue, and you're going to find that area. Here, again, stay 30, 60, 90, 120 seconds here with compression. If you'd like to bring just a little bit of movement to it, we're just literally going to shift the rib cage a little side to side. This may wind up being a kind of a rocking motion too. You could experiment with either the shifting or the slight rocking. You may even want to take your hands onto your rib cage to help facilitate that. I'm feeling like I need a little more, just a little more sensation here. So you won't be able to perceive it, but I'm pushing into my feet and I'm floating my hips just a little bit in order to flatten out my back just a little bit more to get more pressure. So spend as much time as you like there. You'll need to repeat the other side as well. Hit pause, take the time that you need to, but for our instructional purposes, we're going to move on here. We're going to work pectoral muscles and lats here on a block. Place the block onto its medium side, and you'll put your armpit onto the block. This is going to wind up looking like this. Hold your head up with your hand, and then quite literally feels like you're just lounging on top of the block. Get it to a good place where your armpit's right there. Rock toward the back of your armpit. So we're talking about the back and the front. Here's the front of the armpit. You can feel the soft tissue back of the armpit. And we'll go ahead and rock back there. This is really good for the lat muscles, a large muscle in your back, a pulling muscle. So we can rock, rock, rock there. We're going to roll forward toward the front of the block. I think I might have just lost sound, so I'm going to change out my earbud and I'll be right back. So we'll revisit that again, front of the armpit, back of the armpit. Bring your armpit onto the block. And place your head into your hand. So we were rocking toward the back of the armpit, and then we're going to come forward. You're simply going to drape forward. We're not trying to put the head on the ground. If it comes down, that's fine, but otherwise just draping your head forward. Here it's a little bit hard to see, so I'm going to come up so you might be able to see that. This is what it's going to look like when we were here, right? As we drape forward, this inside edge of the block is pressing into the front of the armpit, right here. Now you'll get as much sensation as you need. Again, like the neck, sort of a sensitive area with arteries and veins and nerves that run through this area, one of our main nerves. So we don't want to be on any place that feels uncomfortable. You might feel a little tingling in your hand, and as long as that doesn't feel uncomfortable, that's okay. We won't be here that long. So again, you're rolled forward toward the front. Just one more thing that we could do here. So that's our compression, rolling forward. One more thing that we could do, the arm that is on the block, we could float that just a little bit here, just enough to move it. And we could slide the arm forward and back. I'll lift up so you can see what that would look like if you were the floor. Block is here. We roll forward and we're just sliding the arm forward and back. That's going to bring a kind of a shearing as we press into the front of the armpit and then move the arm. Again, helping the layers of connective tissue to move independently. Of course, you'll do that on both sides, so take your time with that. But we'll move on for our instructional purposes here. We're going to work with the abdomen. Now the abdomen can be a little bit sensitive. It can be a little bit tricky. So just take your time there. Do what feels comfortable for you. Certainly you wouldn't want to do this after you've eaten a meal. Give it a little time to digest. We're going to take the two balls. It's going to go right underneath. So if we feel the side ribs here, our ribs curve up, right, to create this open space here. We've got ribs, and then they curve up. We're going to find that curve up place will be about an inch apart, and then we're going to place the balls in a way that's going to try to sneak them up underneath the rib cage. So we're working our way up toward the diaphragm. So balls will be about an inch apart, right? Maybe just rolling off the ribs. And then we're going to encourage them to sneak up in there. I'm feeling that already without even the pressure of the ground. So we are going to do that forward facing. Again, this is completely up to your own comfort level. So balls will be on the mat here about an inch apart from each other. And then we'll bring ourselves down. You can roll or rock your way into it. Find a place that seems helpful to you. And then you could rest your forehead here on the backs of the hands. I realize that you can't see what this looks like from here. So once you get down there, you're going to have to feel it. This is a sensitive area, an interesting area. So as we're going to be pressing on the diaphragm, you don't want to breathe so deep that it creates discomfort, but you do want to keep your breath going. So if you were the ground, and I was placing the balls here about an inch out, and then they're going to roll underneath the ribs as far as it feels comfortable for you. Take your time with that. Again, 30 seconds, 60 up to 2 minutes, and we might stay there in the abdomen. We're going to work with the obliques, and you could use 1 or 2 balls just depending on if you're longer waisted or shorter waisted. I think for me, 1 ball is probably going to be fine. And that's going to be in that small area between the bottom ribs and the top of the pelvis. We're going to be lying down onto our side. You can either place the ball on the mat and lie down onto it, or you can adjust it there. Another option here would be to use the center ball, the big gray ball. And we're working that ball into the side waist. Now it's a pretty pinpoint area with the ball. So if that feels like it's too much or it's too sharp, you could use this center ball, as long as you've got space on the waist for that. We'll come down onto the side. Yeah, so this one was feeling quite sharp, and this one is feeling a little bit soft. So just decide what it is that you need there. We can support the head with the hand, or place your head onto a block, or simply lie down completely flat. Again, the object here is to encourage whatever you're using to compress the ball to sink into the tissue, to relax, as if your muscles were just relaxing and draping over top of the ball. Here for as long as you like. If we wanted to bring some movement here, we might rock forward and back. That might also help you find other spots that would be helpful. And certainly within these areas, it's not that we're looking for any one particular spot. We're looking for helpful places. So maybe within the side waist, you're going to find one helpful spot, but then you shift and you find something else that's helpful. We're looking to affect the obliques, muscles that run this way, that run this way on the side waist, that help us to turn. So you're certainly going to find more than one place. You make sure that you do it on both sides. Take as much time as you like with that. We're going to work in the back of the hip now, and there's a few places on the posterior hip that might be helpful to you. So we want to stay outside of the sacrum. So we've got spine here, comes down into this flat sacrum area here, and we're going to be working in the back of the hip where there's soft tissue. So that will be below the top rim of the pelvis and then outside of the sacrum. Lots of target-rich environment there for places that we might go to. We're going to start with the balls just outside of the sacrum, so you'll feel that it's hard here, and then if you roll out a little bit, you'll find some soft tissue. We'll work our way down just a little bit from there, again, just outside of the sacrum. We can work our way up into the area that's just below the top of the pelvis. And then we can work our way into what we call the bullseye of our backside. Draw a circle, find the center, that's the bullseye, and that's working into piriformis. So I'll guide you through those different spots. Take your time with it, hit pause. We'll start at the top. Balls are going to be just outside of the sacrum, so put the balls together, and then once you put them back there, you'll find how far apart you need to slide them. Below the top rim of the pelvis, just outside the sacrum. So right there, I felt that I was on the harder bony area, and now I've fallen just off of the sacrum, and the balls are out into soft tissue. That's where we want to be. That's feeling good. Right there, stay with compression again, at least 30 seconds. If you'd like to bring some movement here, you might move your body forward and back, and this is just going to be a tiny bit, shifting forward and back. Tiny bit of, I guess we could call that rocking or sawing forward and back. We're going to drop down to spot number 2, and that's really going to be just maybe like a half an inch below where you were, just outside of the sacrum. Stay here for at least 30 seconds. Again, if you wanted to bring some kind of movement here, that rocking forward and back could be helpful. Maybe a little bit of shifting, but we're really close to the sacrum, so you're not going to get much movement side to side here. As you're ready to, we can shift into Piriformis. The balls will go just a little further down, just a little wider apart. Again, the bullseye of your backside. Here, you might like to work with one side at a time. I like to cross my ankle over my thigh and lean a little bit over to the side, or maybe not even cross over, but just lean a little bit to the side. You find a good spot, stay there for compression. Here, if you'd like to bring some movement, swinging the hips right to left can be helpful. You can see that if I cross my ankle over, I'll do it really big, but you don't need to do it this big. So swinging the pelvis from side to side. The balls will sort of move from their original place, so you're just going to replace back to the spot you need anytime that you need to. Make sure that you do that on both sides. I'm sure that you will. Hit pause and do that. So we're going to move into the gluteus medius, which is going to be higher up in the hip. We'll stack the balls one on top of each other, and we'll hit 3 different locations. So first one is going to be just here on the side of the hip. We'll move a little further, and we'll move a little further toward the sacrum. You want to feel as though you are scooping the tissue back in the direction of the sacrum. You might imagine that you have a rolling pin and you're just rolling the tissue just in one direction. We'll come on to the side, and from here we can place the balls. They're going to disappear here once I begin to roll my body a little bit further forward and scoop the tissue back. And we're going to stay off of bone. Right? And you can place your legs anywhere that you like. There it is. One ball stacked on top of the other. Stay here at least 30 seconds. Find a helpful spot. We can shift a little further back, and this looks like you're rolling about halfway onto your back. As we shift a little bit, still scooping the tissue toward the sacrum, or scooping the tissue back. You can roll back just as far as you need to. To bring movement here, forgot to mention in that first spot, a couple of things you could do. You could bend and straighten the leg just a little bit. You might lift and lower the leg just a little bit. The action of this muscle, its main action, stability, but also to move the leg out to the side. We can't do that here because of the ground, but just any kind of movement that feels helpful is good. Spot number 3, shifting just a little further back. So now we're just outside the sacrum. I like to stay upright, but if you want to lie down onto your back, that's fine too. Again, holding 30 seconds. I know I keep saying it, holding 30 seconds at least first, and then movement if that feels helpful, bending and straightening the leg, lifting and lowering the leg when that feels helpful to you. All right, so let's move on so that we can get to pelvic floor using the center ball. You definitely want to deflate that. Everyone has a pelvic floor, whether you're male or female, so it's not just a female thing. We're going to quite literally sit on top of the ball, and you'll find that the ball is going to press up into the pelvic floor area. Pelvic floor often is described as a hammock, but if we actually look at the muscles, it's more of like a more funnel shaped, and again, not just in females, but in males as well. So you can imagine that the ball would somewhat press up and lift up into that funnel shape. So we can place the ball onto the mat, have a seat right there. And you can imagine the pelvis, if you've ever seen a skeleton, or even just look at a Halloween skeleton too, you can see the shape of the pelvis. But if we rotate a little bit, you'll be able to see that area that's opened up for the soft tissue of the pelvic floor, and that's where we want the ball to settle into. You notice that once you sit down onto it, it looks quite deflated. Once you sit onto it, it feels quite firm, so you don't want it to be inflated very much at all. Here too, you're staying, you're breathing at least 30 seconds up to 2 minutes. All right, so that is our self-myofascial release instruction. There's many other places that you could go to, and certainly I can make another video for some of those other places too. I forgot to mention that it's nice when you're doing myofascial release to spend at least one breath after you remove whatever props you were using in order to just let your body, number one, absorb what you're offering up to it, and then number two, sort of understand the sensations that you're feeling. So always nice to take a breath or two after you remove the prop and just notice what you're feeling. I hope that you will enjoy these myofascial release techniques, and certainly let me know if you have any questions.